Honorable Prime Minister, His Excellency Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the External Affairs Minister of India, Dr. Jaishankar, Foreign Secretary of India, Ambassador Vinay Quatra, esteemed ministers, excellencies, friends and colleagues, a very, very warm welcome to this edition of the Raisina Dialogue. I would also like to extend a special welcome to the Raisina Young Fellows, the officer trainees of the Indian Foreign Service, the young diplomats of Bhutan, Nigeria, India Youth Bridge participants, 18 international students for the Raisina IE University Global Students Challenge, and participants of the Raisina Quad Think Tank Forum. A hearty welcome to all of you. This year, we have over 3,000 attendees from more than 118 countries. Some of you are in this room, but I want to thank each one of you for giving us and India 3 days of your life. Before I present some opening reflections, I would like to use this opportunity to mark an important milestone. The Raisina Dialogue enters its 10th year. To celebrate a decade of conversations, debates, and dialogue, we are releasing a volume that chronicles a journey so far. May I request my colleagues to play a short video.
And aspirations, capacity and human capital, democracy and demography, and strength and success will continue to be an anchor for all-round regional and global progress.
Thank you. All of you will find a copy of this publication on your seats. And on page 21, you will find a foreword by the Honorable Chief Guest, Prime Minister Mitsotakis. Thank you, Prime Minister, for writing this foreword. It truly establishes your affection for India, your support for the dialogue, and your vision for connecting our people. 2024 is a historic year. Over 2 billion people are going to the polls. 64 countries are holding national elections. Half of humanity will decide its future. This year will go down as the single biggest election year in human history. Elections represent hope, optimism, and quest for a better future. They also engender anxiety about what is to come. In fact, it would be fair to say that as humanity, we find ourselves at an inflection point. The choices we make at this juncture will architect a new world. The decisions we make today will be the blueprint for our tomorrows. The theme of this year's dialogue, Chaturanga, touches on the power of four. Literally, meaning four limbs, Chaturanga touches on the strategies that were deployed in the past to maintain order. The elements of that strategy included infantry, cavalry, elephantry, and chariotry. In old times, when order was maintained through force, these were important. That was then, this is now. The world is more evolved, it's more complex, Times have changed, means have changed, but the ends and motivations remain the same. Our theme, Chaturanga, conflict, contest, cooperate, create, engages this moment and the four trends most visible today. The word conflict captures our experience of the first 4 years of this rather long decade. From Afghanistan to Europe, from the Middle East to Africa, elsewhere and everywhere, we are living in a world at war. We are indeed in the age of unpeace. Contests also shape our world today. Pax Americana, that never came to be, and Pax Sinica, that never will be, continue to create tensions that need not be in the midst. And yet, despite these polarized times and divided moments, we believe cooperation is possible. The cooperation we witnessed in New Delhi demonstrated this. India's G20 presidency was ambitious and it carved a consensus that changed the ethic and ethos of G20. From a banker's G20, it became a people's G20. From the financial center, it became the development center. Thank you, Prime Minister Modi, for your leadership and stewardship, for providing the world with a template for building consensus, even as we build ambitions. And finally, I want to touch on the word creation. Creation abounds in new geographies, such as the one you are today present in. From digital public infrastructure to smart mobile-based financial systems, we are experiencing innovation that serves the next 7 billion people. In fact, innovations of the next 7 billion people are now reaching the others as well. Conflict, contest, cooperate, and create. These are 4 trends of our times. How do we navigate these as individuals, as communities, as countries, and as a collective? Being slightly poetic, let me just add, the old order has withered away. The new order is still in its infancy, but there is no better moment than now. We must realize that we are not being acted upon. We are the actors. Our stories are not being written for us. We are the authors. The time to despair is behind us, and this year we pose that vital question to all of us. What is the strategy of our times? What is the Chaturanga for this moment? This is the goal of this year's dialogue, to write a truly forward-looking script to ensure that the stories of tomorrow are not scripted by any single pen. And at this dialogue, we don't seek conformity, we confront reality. Be kind, be real, be purposeful. And once again, thank you so much for being here. With this, let me now invite the chairman of the Observer Research Foundation, Mr. Sanjay Joshi, to reflect on the theme and introduce our very special inaugural speaker this evening, Mr. Sanjay Joshi.
Thank you, Samir. A very good evening to our distinguished guests, Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, our guest of honor, Excellency Kyriakos Mitsotakis, Prime Minister of Greece, Honorable External Affairs Minister Shri Jaishankar, our partners from the Ministry of External Affairs, ministers, admirals, generals, and eminent guests from across the world. Speakers and delegates, the first quarter of the 21st century will probably go down in history as an interregnum, a period caught in the crosshairs of a transition, a time of questioning, of upheaval and discord. And in this churn, we find ourselves in a divided world, a world cleft in 2 hemispheres, each scared and haunted by the shadow of the other. Many today actually despair over the return of another dark age. The parallels are many. First, the Black Death came calling in 2020. The prosperous fenced themselves in. Now we see wars proliferate across the face of the globe, break out into conflicts, constrained by no rules or conventions. Nations struggle to guard borders, while others flee to escape the horrors of conflict. New instruments of war that cut off access to finance, food, energy, information are deployed at scale. Yet, these are not the dark ages. The digital age actually is not a dark age. It is no descent into darkness. If anything, it is a case of being blinded by too much light, being rendered sightless in the hypnotic glare of our sleepless screens day and night. Hypersaturated and hyperstimulated, our ability to discriminate between is completely confounded. We can't tell between what is true and what is fake. Disinformation today spreads faster, deeper, and far wider than the truth can run. And every tweet chips away the foundations of trust. And as a majority of the world's population approaches elections this year, a fear looms. Can democracies endure attacks from ideological opponents on the one hand, and algorithms designed to deceive on the other? And so the dilemma of our times, how do democracies surmount the temptation to copy the other? How do they prevent fear from transforming them to become the very enemy they seek to defeat? Because if they were to lose the sense of what is to be democracy, who would have won and who would have lost? So this was how Chaturanga came and became the central idea for Raisina 2024. That board game of war, of moves and counter moves spreading across all domains. One version about the origin of Chaturanga claims that the game was devised by Queen Mandodari, the consort wife of the demon king Ravana. Now, this pious and God-fearing woman hoped that this game would distract her war-mongering lord away from real conflict by immersing him in a virtual board game. Today, actually, as the virtual acquires ever greater power over the real, the situation is actually inverted. It is time to wonder, which is the real war? Is it the one where innocent lives are lost as collateral damage to algorithms run on not so intelligent machines? Or is it the one curated for our screens to sway us, to numb us, and to make our minds the products of conflict? But in the midst of all this, let me tell you, Chaturanga has another meaning. It stands for a genre of music. A musical composition, which is a 360-degree melodious performance in 4 parts, spun out spontaneously in real time by a group of artists responding to each other. Responding to make their notes, their words, their meaning, and their rhythm meld into one harmonious whole. That is Chaturanga. So too, in the spirit of that music, in another corner of the world, 2023, the year also emerged as the year for forging a consensus within the global south, as well as across the north and the south. And as we convene this 9th edition of Raisina, we aspire to build upon India's G20 legacy of fostering consensus and devising solutions. And in this, we're delighted this year to welcome Excellency Kyriakos Mitsotakis, the Prime Minister of Greece. Welcome, sir. You have spearheaded Greece's recovery momentum through effective policy reform aimed at modernizing the economy, enhancing social cohesion, and transitioning to a greener and more digital future. Your presence at this forum symbolizes the deep linkages between the people of our two nations, a relationship that has existed since times immemorial between a land proud of its democratic heritage and a land renowned for its pluralistic traditions. We look to Greece not only as a centuries-old friend, but also as a partner, with the collective aim of returning us from the Chaturanga of war to the Chaturanga of concord in order to revitalize a broken global community. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Prime Minister Modi, the Minister of External Affairs, dear Chairman of the Observer Research Foundation, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you first of all for this very warm welcome. And it is an honor and a privilege to be here today with you at this 9th edition of the Raisina Dialogue. And if I may be allowed to say, you have transformed this event from a regional into a global public square for dialogue and exchange of ideas. Congratulations. And let me start by saying that today is a moment to both reflect upon and celebrate the strength of the partnership between our two great nations, between India and Greece. A partnership bound by economic, cultural, philosophical ties stretching back millennia. A partnership between two allies, two countries that share similar values. A partnership that today binds us closer than ever before. But above else, a partnership between the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy. And it is to democracy that I turn first. Ladies and gentlemen, as was pointed out in the introduction by the chairman, 2024 is a year of striking geopolitical importance. Not least because this year, half of the world's population will go to the polls in as many as 64 countries, and of course the European Union, to choose the democratic representatives who will shape the destinies of their people, but also the future of the world for the foreseeable future. And the sheer scale of this global exercise in democratic self-governance is incredible. It's also a testament to the lasting power of democracy. And elections here in India, as I had an opportunity to discuss with Prime Minister Modi, this vast, thriving, giant nation of 1.4 billion people, elections here in India convincingly challenge any flawed notion that significant scale is a barrier to democracy. You are an example to the world. An example which should be celebrated. A demonstration of how democracy can deliver stronger economic growth. This has been your record for a decade now. How strong economic growth can deliver prosperity, and how, of course, the delivery of prosperity can also strengthen social cohesion. Now, of course, not all democracies are the same, nor do they face the same challenges, but they do share the same ideals and the same fundamental guiding principles. The most important being the right of people to determine their own future through fair and free elections. And of course, democracies have more than that in common. They're all, in a sense, imperfect. There is no such thing as a perfect democracy. They're all constant works in progress. and they all, of course, face a range of unprecedented threats. And that's why I believe that this year, 2024, will be a definitional year for democracy. And we must face head-on, but also shoulder-to-shoulder, a demanding set of challenges. They were very well portrayed in this short video which introduced today's event, from climate change, poverty to mass migration, to war, geopolitical tensions, and both the fear and hope posed by the rapid emergence of artificial intelligence. All of which helps to explain why, when back in August, Prime Minister Modi was kind enough to suggest that I visit India and give this keynote address, I did not hesitate. In a year as important as this one, the themes at the heart of this dialogue around regulation, innovation, multilateralism, peace and security, prosperity, the issue, defense of democracy, I will come back to this issue in a bit, matter more than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, today India is a great power on the world stage, an important ally in the pursuit of peace and security, a rising force at the heart of the G20, and a leading player in the fight against climate change. India's status is reflected in the strategic relations that the European Union enjoys with India. President Ursula von der Leyen was at this stage 2 years ago at the Raisina Dialogue, and she said, for the European Union, strengthening and energizing the partnership with India is a priority in this upcoming debate. I would dare Prime Minister Modi to go further. Strengthening our partnership with India, and I'm speaking about Europe, should be a cornerstone of Europe's foreign policy. And this is certainly true for my country. We have made good progress over the past years towards achieving that goal, but we have much further to go. And Greece has an important role in this endeavor. And as I told the Prime Minister during his recent visit to Athens, I should point out the first by an Indian Prime Minister since 1983, we are at a unique moment of mutually beneficial opportunity. One in which Greece, given its geographic, cultural, and strategic proximity, can act as an interlocutor between India and Europe, and I would dare to go even wider lens, between the global north and the global south, and indeed between the east and the west. Since ancient times, Greece's position at a physical and cultural crossroads means that it has always been a corridor for exchange in goods, in knowledge, and in wisdom. Today, Greece has excellent relations with all countries in the Middle East, the Gulf countries, and is uniquely placed as a connector between the Mediterranean Sea and the Indo-Pacific. It presents so much opportunity for both our countries. We are already a well-established logistics center, an international gateway, but we want to increase connectivity and promote trade still further. Piraeus is one of the busiest ports in Europe. More of our ports are in the process of being privatized. Greek ship owners, something which is absolutely critical also for India, control the largest merchant marine fleet in the world. And beyond the flow of goods, we are pursuing new corridors for data and energy. And the emergence of groundbreaking projects like IMEC, the India, Middle East, Europe corridor, hold great promise to supercharge connectivity between India, the growth economies of the Middle East, and Europe. One has just to look at the map to realize that Greece is sitting right in the center of this new corridor. And to our friends in India, I say, we are your natural doorstep to Europe and beyond. And the war in Gaza and the turmoil in the Middle East is undoubtedly destabilizing, but it does not undermine the profound, the powerful logic behind IMEC, nor should it weaken our resolve to work tirelessly towards materializing it. Instead, I would argue it gives us even more reasons to promote peace, given that IMEC at its heart is also a peace project, which can bring about stability and prosperity for all participating countries. Countries which are at war don't trade with each other. The Indo-Pacific region is a major focus for the European Union's global policy. And earlier this month in Brussels, at the third EU Indo-Pacific Ministerial Forum, we took a series of measures aimed at intensifying the partnership between the European Union and the countries of the Indo-Pacific. Our two regions are increasingly connected because we face the same challenges, but we also share the same interests, promoting peace, prosperity, stability, and of course climate and environmental resilience. Dear Prime Minister, dear friends, recognizing the strategic importance of the role India plays in this evolving new order is fundamental. And the relationship between India and Greece, as we had an opportunity to reconfirm in our very fruitful bilateral discussions today, is one based on respect, on friendship, on values, but also on the mutual will to see our people progress and prosper. And while obviously not all challenges are the same, the way we meet these challenges often is. The scale may be vastly different, but I see a lot of similarities in the way our two countries have implemented an ambitious reform agenda. Both India and Greece have pursued sustainable growth and prosperity through innovation and bold changes. We have both encouraged and embraced the digital revolution. We have leveraged, you have done this here in India, at an unprecedented scale, leveraging technology to transform the delivery of public services for the benefit of all citizens. And we have both demonstrated that the power of innovative and bold reforms that bring growth, spread opportunity, deliver prosperity, and create the higher-paying jobs of the future, this is the path to go. And I believe that my country's, Greece's, recent story of rapid change matters also to a country like India, and by extension to what that change means for Indian investment in Greece and the European Union. The country I was called upon to govern when first elected to office in 2019 was seen by many analysts at the time as the sick man of Europe. Between 2015 and 2019, populism had promised much, delivered nothing, and left Greece teetering on the edge. And effective policy making has changed that, and it has transformed Greece's prospects. First, growth-oriented policies, but always underpinned by fiscal responsibility. Second, a robust approach to migration and security, supported by an assertive foreign policy and the shaping of new regional partnerships, like the one between Greece and India. And third, investing in health, in education, and using any fiscal headroom generated by a growing economy to tackle social inequality. And by cutting taxes, supporting entrepreneurs, spurring investments through market reforms, much like India has done, Greece has seen over the past years one of the highest growth rates in the Eurozone. And we have witnessed the fastest reduction of debt to GDP ratio of any European country. Credit ratings have returned, credit rating agencies have returned Greek debt to investment grade, and The Economist voted us country of the year for 2023. All of which has led to falling unemployment, higher wages, record foreign investment, and a rapid shift towards the green and digital economies of the future, and of course a new, more assertive Greece at the heart of Europe. And today I am proud to be able to talk to you about a very different Greece to the country that many had written off as unreformable a few years ago. And the confident Greece of today not only wants to be an integral part of region-to-region partnerships, but also knows it can be the new gateway to Europe for India's businesses, its entrepreneurs, its wealth creators. This is why 6 months ago we elevated our strategic ties through the India-Greece Strategic Partnership. India is the world's fastest big economy. Greece has over the past years enjoyed some of the fastest growth rates of any European country. Mutual investment is a major goal of our bilateral relations. And I'm pleased to say that we already have a number of significant Greek investments here in India in many sectors, including food processing, led by one of our leading companies, Chipita, and infrastructure, maritime and air transport, logistics. One of our leading banks, Eurobank, is establishing its first office in India. But India is already investing heavily in Greece's infrastructure, including the construction of the new airport by GMR on my home island of Crete. Indian-owned Swiss Group has invested in a number of Greek agri-food businesses, and Accord, a European subsidiary of Intas Pharmaceuticals, has recently invested in a factory close to Athens. The volume of our bilateral trade is on an upward trend, but we have agreed with Prime Minister Modi that we need to do much more, and we need to set a target to double it by 2030. It has great potential for future growth. In tourism, we have only scratched the surface of what we can do together as a new emerging Indian middle class will start to travel and discover the world. What better natural destination than Greece, given the cultural affinities between our two people? So I do believe that we can do much more, which is why the business delegation, the business leaders who have accompanied me to Greece, include nearly 100 leaders of some of Greece's biggest companies, but also for some of its most dynamic and fastest growing small and medium-sized enterprises. And from Delhi, I will be traveling tomorrow to Mumbai, and my delegation will continue to Bangalore with a simple message. Greece is growing like never before, and to Indian businesses, we say, please join us on that journey. Ladies and gentlemen, I touched a little earlier on the growing importance of the role of India on the international stage. It is the leading democracy in the global south. And Prime Minister of the world is looking to you like never before when it comes to shaping the direction of the global debate and addressing the great challenges that we face. India is now often regarded, and rightly so, as a consensus builder and as a voice of reason in an increasingly polarized world. And we too often forget that the raison d'etre, the real reason why the international system was created in the first place, was simple, because nations large and small recognized that their true interest lay ultimately not in antagonism and in conflict, but in partnership and cooperation. And we cannot afford to overlook the cost of conflict and the human tragedy and suffering it unleashes. And this 9th edition of the Raisina Dialogue is taking place at a time of heightened geopolitical tensions, a protracted war in Ukraine, new conflict in the Middle East, where the violence that has erupted goes beyond the direst predictions. There's a horrifying death toll of civilians. There's a risk of regional destabilization. There's no clear path, at the moment at least, to a sustainable de-escalation. As for the war in Ukraine, the unthinkable has happened. A war in the European heartland. It is still raging on with devastating consequences. 2 years, almost to the date, since Russia attacked Ukraine. And I understand that countries that belong to the global south see this frequently as a European war. And I hear all too often that we Europeans do apply double standards, focusing on Ukraine at the expense of wars and crises in the rest of the world. And maybe there is truth in that allegation. But I would like to make the point here in Delhi that Ukraine is much more than a local war on European soil. It is a brutal challenge to international stability and the international rules-based order that India has supported and has every interest in maintaining. And I think we all have a responsibility to use the power we have on the international stage. And none of us can afford to sit on the sidelines. And I'm convinced that on Ukraine, India has an important role to play. It has a voice that should be heard. Our common humanity and interconnectedness are inescapable. To draw from the Hindu scriptures that put it so powerfully, the world is one family. And sacred Sanskrit wisdom that resonates loud and clear today. And that brings me to the existential threat that climate change poses to our fragile planet and all the life that inhabits it. Greece, like India, we discussed this today with the Prime Minister, has already witnessed and suffered the consequences. The climate crisis is here. It's not something that will happen in the future. We have accelerated our energy transition in recent years in order to mitigate those effects, but we've also invested heavily in adaptation. In Greece, we now generate half of our electricity from solar and wind. It is one of the highest percentages in the world. And this transition has brought us cleaner air, it has brought us cheaper energy, it has brought us less dependence on imported energy, and of course greater security from external shocks. But we also know that climate ambition must be based on what is fair and on what is realistic. And each country will forge its own path towards net zero in light with the twin imperatives of energy security and affordability. And the Green Development Pact, Prime Minister Modi, was a major step forward under India's G20 presidency. And it was an important bridge between the global south and the north, providing pathways for nations in this critical journey towards achieving energy, climate, environmental, and disaster resilience-related objectives. And at COP28, we demonstrated that it is possible at the global scale to come to some agreement and to make progress. At the same time, it is evident that we do need to do much more and put our pledges into practice with the utmost energy. Ladies and gentlemen, India and Greece, Greece and India have something else in common. We see democracy not as an inconvenient barrier to delivering against contemporary challenges, but as our greatest hope of ensuring that we do. And democracy, as was established 2,500 years ago in ancient Athens, is rooted in the conviction that society functions best when all its citizens are equal and have the right to share in the running of the state. But, as was pointed out in the introduction, we should have no illusions. Democracy is vulnerable, and it is facing profound threats. And those who detest our democratic values have one big advantage. They are not bound by those values. And we must be alert to the emerging challenges and adaptable enough to address them with real solutions. We must, if necessary, own up to our own mistakes. But above all, we must listen to each other with mutual respect, without preaching or exhibiting any sense of moral superiority. But no matter how disparate beliefs and ideologies are in any given society, we need to be able to rely on some basic truths and agree on the facts that at the end of the day shape any democratic discourse. And we know that democracy can work best only if all our citizens have the information they need to make informed decisions at the ballot box. And our technological advances, profound as they may be, AI, social media, the internet itself, need to be tools to facilitate the propagation of information. They must not be weapons against reality. And it is now undeniable that artificial intelligence presents a powerful tool for deceptive use at the hands of malicious actors who wish to disrupt democratic elections. And no democratic nation, large or small, is immune to this threat. Government regulation is frequently necessary. I'm very glad that the European Union has already agreed on what we call the Artificial Intelligence Act, the first ever legal framework regulating artificial intelligence. But also the technology sectors, as the producers of AI, need to exercise the utmost responsibility, and this is true for all global technology companies. And it is good that we're starting to work on this. I was able to witness it firsthand at the Munich Security Conference last week. There are some of the leading companies of the sector signed an accord to combat deceptive use of artificial intelligence in the 2024 elections. And all these are good steps, but it is clear that it is just the beginning. In the coming years, we will need to do more in order to protect democracy from the many threats that will be launched against it, perhaps already in this very crucial election year. And today, democracy, and that is why this gathering is so important, is about essentially outsmarting those who seek to bend and misshape the rule of democratic discourse in their favor. And India and Greece have vital roles to play in achieving that goal, whether at the United Nations, where Greece is seeking a rotating seat on the Security Council next year, at the G20, which was so expertly chaired by India last year, or through the European Union. And by the way, Greece is supporting the reform of the Security Council of the United Nations in order for leading countries such as India to be represented at the highest table and in order for their voice to be heard. But, and here I'm referring to all the policymakers who participate at this year's dialogue, we need your help. Because at the end of the day, effective policy making relies on creative thinking, and it flourishes in international fora, such as the one I have the privilege of addressing today. Prime Minister Modi, Minister Jaishankar, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, it is worth reflecting on the fact that while Greece and India discovered democracy and certainly each other a long time ago, it is today that they're discovering each other again. And the success of this cooperation is based on a very simple premise. We both believe in the virtues of discussion and debate. After all, ancient civilizations encouraged this debate and this cross-fertilization of ideas. And there's a lot. We talk a lot about artificial intelligence, but there's also a lot to be learned by the ancestral intelligence which is hidden in our ancient civilizations. And we recognize that without such debate, the search for truth is meaningless. This world is increasingly divided. It's divided between the West and the East, between the South and the North. And Greece and India stand essentially at the intersection of these divisions. These divisions can be managed, they can even be tempered by open discussions, which is why the world needs, and you called it a public square. I will call it an agora, agora, the ancient word, not just a marketplace, but a new meeting place where ideas can be tested against each other. And the Raisina dialogue is indeed providing us with this new agora. A divided world needs more tangible and physical connections as well. And the integration of our two seas, the Indo-Pacific on the one hand, the Mediterranean Sea on the other, will benefit not just India and Greece, but our neighbors too. Our two people have much to learn from each other, and they also have much to give to the world. And if we are to do so with effect, we must begin today with a commitment to public discourse, open discussions, tolerance, acceptance of the opposite view, and of course, the preservation of the democratic idea. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister, for that wonderful address. I take back at least two words with me: ancestral intelligence. I think that's something we should all be focusing on. I think there's a merit to that. But I also saw a hint of an invitation for a Raisina Agora on the Mediterranean in Greece. And I take you up on that invitation. But let me now invite the Honorable Foreign Minister of India, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to propose a vote of thanks.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji, Prime Minister Mitsotakis, Excellencies, dear friends. It's my privilege to give the vote of thanks that will conclude the Raisina Dialogue's inaugural event this evening. First and foremost, we thank the chief guest, the Prime Minister of Greece and his wife, for joining us today. Our collective appreciation to Prime Minister Mitsotakis for what I'm confident all of you will agree was a truly inspirational and thought-provoking address. His message of democracies that deliver resonates strongly, particularly now, particularly here. Prime Minister Modi's presence amongst us, as always, is a reminder of India's growing engagement with the world, especially in the last decade. He has shown us why it is as important to listen and reflect as it is Modi's visit in 2023. As two civilizational states, our countries have a particular responsibility to contribute to the evolution of the contemporary global order. We both, naturally, tend to take a long view of challenges and a considered one of opportunities. In the flow of history, connectivity has always played a crucial role. It is only to be expected that the talks between the two prime ministers today focused on enhancing the linkage between two global economic centers, India and Europe. The IMEC corridor, as Prime Minister Mitsotakis pointed out, holds particular importance in this regard. As India deepens its footprint abroad, Greece has emerged as a favorable destination. Our pharmaceutical industry, our agro-business and aviation are already established there, and the Prime Minister in his address mentioned growing Greek investment and interest in India. We expect that a mobility agreement will bring us even closer. Raisina is good for business as well. Ladies and gentlemen, India's growing interest in the Mediterranean region is an important facet of our steady rise. The India-Greece partnership can surely serve as an anchor. Raisina Dialogue, as a made-in-India version of a global public square, has become what it is due to all of you. I thank you all for that. Please keep coming. Please keep talking. Please keep contributing. To Team Raisina and Team MEA, a special word of acknowledgement and encouragement. You have made all this possible. Please remain ambitious and keep challenging yourself even as you challenge others. Finally, let me recognize the Raisina Chronicles as we near the first decade. It captures what we have achieved, but more importantly, indicates the promise ahead. Once again, thank you all and a very good evening.
Thank you, Dr. Jaishankar. May I request you all to remain seated as the VIPs exit the room. My colleague Shubh will take this mic and will guide you through the next steps post the exit of the VIPs. But I'll request you all to remain seated.